From the cold silence of space, they watched us. To them, we were fragile, skin too soft, bones too brittle, lifespans too short. A species that should never have risen past prey. But in their arrogance, they mistook fragility for weakness. And soon, the Dominion would learn, what breaks easily, also learns how to endure. The observation chamber of the Vajrak Dominion's flagship hummed with cold precision. Walls of black alloy curved upward into a dome lined with pale blue light, casting long shadows across the gathered counselors. Their gazes, slitted, luminous, predatory, were fixed upon the holoscreen that hovered in the center of the chamber. On the screen, Earth. A blue-green marble turning slowly in the void, wrapped in its thin veil of atmosphere. To the Dominion, it was an unremarkable world, rich in oxygen, decent in minerals, but otherwise a backwater compared to the crystalline empires and molten cores they had already harvested. What intrigued them was not the planet itself, but the bipedal mammals crawling across its surface. Humans, hissed Commander Redhar, his four-fingered hand gesturing dismissively. His voice vibrated through the air like gravel dragged across metal. Fragile. Look at their structure, skin unarmored, bone brittle, lifespan a mere flicker of cosmic time. They are soft. A ripple of dark amusement rolled through the chamber. High Overseer Dravketh tilted his long skull, membranes around his eyes tightening as he zoomed in on footage, a human child tripping on rough ground, scraping its knee. Blood welled up, and the child cried out. To the counselors, it was proof of weakness. Primitive, said another. They bleed from the slightest abrasion. Their bodies are inefficient, constantly requiring fuel, sleep, and care. They are slaves to hunger and fatigue. Not even bioengineered, Redhar added, his tone dripping with contempt. No exoskeleton, no venom glands, no claws. By the Dominion's measure, they should not have risen past prey. On the holoscreen, the footage shifted to show human cities, skyscrapers clawing at the sky, networks of lights blinking against the night. Airplanes cut across clouds. Rockets erupted upward into orbit. Yet somehow, murmured Overseer Dravketh, they build. The chamber grew quiet for a moment. For all their disdain, the council could not deny what they saw. Humans had learned to fly without wings, cross oceans without gills, and leave their planet despite lacking natural armor or weapons. But pride makes the eye blind. They compensate for weakness with crude machines, sneered Redhar, breaking the silence. Tools are a sign of inadequacy. A strong species carries its weapons within. What would these frail creatures be without their toys? The others nodded, soothed by the thought. Dominion law was clear, weakness equaled subjugation. A lower-ranking observer shuffled forward, talons clicking nervously on the metallic floor. Commander, records indicate humans endured ice ages, plagues, and endless internal wars. They seem persistent. Rethar's eyes narrowed into slits. Persistence is not strength. It is desperation. A starving beast will claw the ground for scraps, it does not make it mighty. The chamber filled with low growls of agreement. The council was convinced. Footage flickered again, this time of humans at war. Soldiers crawling through mud, faces streaked with blood and ash, still moving forward despite wounds. Civilians pulling each other from rubble after bombings. Doctors working without rest, hands shaking but refusing to stop. To the council, it was simply evidence of a reckless, self-destructive nature. Look at them squander themselves, said one overseer with a harsh laugh. They kill their own kind endlessly. They cannot even achieve unity. A doomed species, tearing itself apart. Dravketha's gaze lingered on one image, a soldier carrying a wounded comrade across a battlefield, refusing to abandon him despite incoming fire. For a fleeting second, something stirred within the overseer. A question, a flicker of doubt. But doubt was weakness. He buried it. Then it is decided, Dravketh said, voice echoing through the chamber. The humans are unworthy of fear. They will kneel, as all others have knelt. The Dominion will descend, and their world will be ours. A chorus of claws striking metal sealed the judgment. Far below, on the blue marble, humanity went on unaware, laughing, grieving, dreaming beneath their fragile skies. They did not yet know that predators watched from the stars, eager to claim their home. Nor did the predators know what awaited them. For humanity's true strength lay hidden, like fire beneath ash. It was not in claws, nor armor, nor venom. It was in something the Dominion had never faced before. And when the stars brought war, the overseers of the Vaedrak would learn, too late, that weakness was only what they believed. The laboratories of the Vaedrak Dominion were built for precision and cruelty. Their walls gleamed like polished obsidian, lit by strips of pale light that buzzed faintly overhead. Within, rows of containment cells lined a vast chamber. Each cell was transparent, reinforced with energy fields strong enough to restrain beasts that could rip through steel. Now those cells contained humans. Men, women, even a few children, taken from Earth's surface during the Dominion's first covert raids. They sat huddled together, eyes wide, hearts pounding. To the aliens, they looked like frightened livestock awaiting dissection. Commander Redheart prowled the aisle between the cells, his talons scraping the floor. "Observe them," he ordered the scientists clustered nearby. "Measure their thresholds. Show me what passes for strength among these frail things." The first test began. A male subject was strapped onto a cold slab, mechanical restraints holding him down. A Dominion scientist extended a slender probe tipped with a needle into the man's arm. Clear fluid was injected, an agent designed to induce searing pain while leaving no lasting damage. The man arched his back, teeth grinding. A cry burst from his lips, but he did not break. He cursed, spat, and stared defiantly at his captors, sweat dripping down his brow. Redheart tilted his head, unimpressed. They vocalized their suffering. Pathetic. True strength is silence. But one scientist noted quietly, "Commander, his heart rate stabilizes more quickly than expected. His pain tolerance exceeds projections." An anomaly, Redheart dismissed. Continue. The next test was endurance. A group of humans were released into a simulated environment, an artificial wasteland of blistering heat and choking dust. The Dominion scientists observed from above, expecting collapse within hours. Their kind required specialized suits in such extremes, but surely the soft-skinned creatures would perish quickly. They did not. Hours passed. The humans rationed water, tore strips from their clothing to shield themselves from the sun, and moved in patterns that conserved strength. One collapsed, but the others refused to abandon him. They carried the weakened man across the burning ground, stumbling but never stopping. By the end of the trial, half of them were still standing, swaying on their feet but alive. Dravketh narrowed his eyes at the monitors. Curious. They persist when logic suggests surrender. Redheart growled. Persistence is meaningless without power. Rats endure as well, scurrying in shadows. Are we to fear vermin? The scientists made no reply, though several exchanged uneasy glances. A final test was ordered, fear response. A towering Dominion beast, all claws and fangs, was released into one of the cells. The creature snarled, its bulk dwarfing the humans inside. The aliens anticipated screams, panic, desperate attempts to hide. Instead, the humans formed a circle. The largest man stood at the front, gripping a broken metal pipe torn from the cell's corner. Behind him, two others shielded the children. Their eyes burned not with submission, but with grim determination. When the beast lunged, the man swung the pipe with both hands. It shattered against the monster's hide, barely wounding it. Still, he roared and struck again. Others joined, fists and feet flying against impossible odds. The beast eventually overpowered them, but not before several of its scales were cracked and bloodied. The scientists recorded every second. "Commander," one whispered, voice low, "they fight even when defeat is certain. They protect the young without hesitation. This is unusual." Redheart snarled, baring his fangs. "It is instinct, nothing more." An animal defends its brood. Do not mistake instinct for valor. But Overseer Dravketh said nothing. His gaze lingered on the humans lying battered in the cell, broken, yet still alive. Even in pain, they pulled each other upright, refusing to crawl away from one another. He felt that flicker again, that unwelcome thought, what if we have misjudged them? The tests concluded, data stored, and reports filed. To the Dominion, the results were troubling but not threatening. Humans were stubborn, yes. But stubbornness was not strength. Redhar summarized it coldly before the council. They are weak animals who claw at inevitability. They will break when the Dominion's true might descends. No one disagreed, openly. Yet in the laboratories, in hushed voices, the scientists spoke differently. They had seen something their commanders refused to name. Something in the humans' eyes, in their refusal to yield, that unsettled even the most hardened alien observers. Something that whispered of danger yet to come. And above them all, Earth turned silently in space, carrying billions more of these weak creatures who would soon be tested, not in a laboratory, but in war. The Dominion fleet hung above Earth like a crown of knives. Hundreds of ships, sleek, black, predatory, formed an orbiting blockade, their silhouettes blotting out stars. To the humans below, they appeared as silent omens, though few truly grasped the scale of what was coming. On the flagship Vadralis, the council gathered once more in the Grand War Chamber. The air vibrated with the low hum of power cores, and the walls glowed faintly with tactical displays of Earth, its continents, oceans, and scattered military forces highlighted in red. Commander Redhar stood tall at the center, arrogance radiating from his posture. The tests confirm what we already knew. These humans are resilient in trivial ways, but they are not warriors. They bleed too easily. They lack discipline, hierarchy, unity. They are small. A chorus of approving growls rippled around the chamber. Our invasion will be swift, another overseer declared. A single strike to decapitate their governments, followed by pacification sweeps across their territories. Within cycles, Earth will be pacified and assimilated. Dravketh listened in silence. His mind replayed the images from the laboratories, the soldier carrying his comrade, the circle of humans shielding their young. He had not spoken of his doubts aloud, not yet. To question the Dominion's doctrine was to invite suspicion. Still, he felt unease gnawing at him. The chamber dimmed as the holoscreen shifted to a feed from Earth itself. The humans had noticed the fleet now. Panic spread across cities. News broadcasts screamed of unidentified vessels. People gathered in streets, looking upward with fear and awe. Look at them, Redhar sneered. Paralyzed by the mere sight of us. They have no comprehension of what descends upon them. Laughter rolled through the overseers. Meanwhile, on Earth, that paralysis was already cracking. In a bunker beneath Washington, generals barked orders as scrambled footage poured in from satellites. In Moscow, old Cold War machines were dragged from their slumber. In Beijing, scientists pored over intercepted alien signals, decoding fragments of language. Across the globe, nations that had spent decades distrusting one another suddenly stared at the same threat in the sky. For once, borders blurred. We don't have time for politics, one exhausted commander said, his voice hoarse. If we fight each other, we die. If we fight together, maybe we live. Ordinary citizens moved too. In small towns, people filled basements with supplies. In cities, blood banks overflowed with volunteers. Firefighters, paramedics, and soldiers braced themselves, not knowing what would come. And in the silence of rural plains, a boy looked up at the night sky, clenched his fists, and whispered, "Come and try." Back aboard the Dominion flagship, scouts delivered their initial reports. Humans are mobilizing, one officer said cautiously. Their militaries are attempting coordination. Redhar let out a guttural laugh. Coordination? You call that chaos coordination? Look at their fractured systems. Different languages, different commands, even different weapons. They will trip over themselves before they ever strike at us. Another overseer chimed in, their weaponry is primitive. Ballistics, explosives, chemical propellants. Crude metal tubes and fire. Against plasma arrays and shielded hulls? They will scratch at us like insects against stone. Yes, Redhar said, his voice booming with finality. The humans will fall. Their persistence will crumble beneath inevitability. They are not the first primitive species we have crushed, and they will not be the last. The overseers struck their claws against the table in thunderous agreement. Dravketh remained silent. He remembered the humans in the simulation carrying each other through the desert, half dead but moving forward. He remembered the defiance in their eyes as they faced the beast with nothing but scraps of metal. He looked once more at Earth, the little blue planet glowing beneath them. Billions of humans lived down there. Billions with that same defiance simmering quietly inside them. For a moment, he wondered if the Dominion's arrogance was blinding them. But like before, he buried the thought deep. The war drums had already started. At dawn on Earth, the sky lit up. The first Dominion ships pierced the atmosphere, black shadows streaking fire across the heavens. Cities trembled as shockwaves rolled across the land. People screamed, prayed, and reached for weapons. To the Dominion, it was the beginning of conquest. To humanity, it was the moment history split in two. Weak? Perhaps. Fragile? Undoubtedly. But as the first alien boots touched soil, humanity prepared to show the universe what fragility could endure. The Dominion expected submission. When their dropships landed across Earth, blotting out the skies with wings of black alloy, they anticipated terror, kneeling, and silence. Their doctrine told them that fear broke species faster than weapons. But fear has strange alchemy. In some, it bends the spine. In others, it forges iron. The first sparks appeared in the ruins. In a shattered district of Sao Paulo, Dominion soldiers marched through the rubble, their clawed feet grinding over glass and broken concrete. Loudspeakers translated their ultimatum in a dozen human tongues. Surrender. Accept Dominion rule. Resistance is futile. Civilians huddled in alleys, eyes hollow. Then, from a crumbling apartment window, a single shot rang out. A human rifle, primitive by Dominion standards, spat fire. One alien soldier fell, armor pierced at the joint. The Dominion squad roared, plasma fire scorching the building to ash. But by then, the shooter was gone, vanishing into the chaos. That was the beginning. In Warsaw, Dominion patrols entered the old subway tunnels to flush out survivors. They expected frightened prey. Instead, they walked into traps, wires strung with explosives built from scavenged fuel, corridors collapsing as hidden humans struck and vanished. In the Australian outback, small groups melted into the desert, using knowledge of the land to outlast the patrols that hunted them. In the American Midwest, farmers wielded hunting rifles, shotguns, even sharpened tools. They fought not for victory but for time. Time for their families to run, time for their neighbors to rally. Resistance had no banner, no single voice. It was messy, improvised, desperate. And yet, in that chaos, something frighteningly effective began to emerge. Humans adapted. In Cairo, an engineer who once built bridges learned to sabotage Dominion hovercrafts by targeting resonance points in their engines. In Seoul, computer hackers cracked into Dominion communication relays, turning alien orders into static. In Mumbai, children served as runners, darting through alleys too narrow for Dominion exosuits, carrying messages that stitched fractured cells into something larger. Commander Redhar was furious. On the Vadralis, he slammed a clawed fist against the tactical display. They should be broken already. This resistance is not organized, it is chaos. A scientist dared to speak. Commander, perhaps chaos is their strength. They adapt faster then. Rethar's snarl cut the word short. Enough excuses. Crush them harder. Burn their cities. Starve them. They will yield. The overseers nodded, eager to believe. But Overseer Dravketh remained quiet, watching reports scroll across the displays. Too many skirmishes, too many surprises. For every city the Dominion subdued, another whispered with rebellion. Something was shifting, and he felt it. On Earth, hope flickered. In a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Berlin, survivors gathered around a flickering lantern. Soldiers, doctors, farmers, and children all sat shoulder to shoulder. Their clothes were scorched, their bodies bruised, but their eyes gleamed with something the Dominion could not quantify. A young woman, her arm bandaged, spoke into a salvaged radio. Her voice was steady despite exhaustion. "This is Berlin. We are still alive. To anyone listening, fight however you can. Break them however you can. We are not done." The message spread, bouncing across scavenged frequencies, whispered from bunker to bunker. "We are still alive. Fight however you can." The Dominion's doctrine had always been simple: crush the will, and the body follows. But with humans, every attempt to crush only fanned the fire. And that fire was spreading. In the jungles of South America, hunters tracked Dominion soldiers as though they were prey. In icy Siberia, villagers outlasted patrols by vanishing into the snow. In the streets of Tokyo, resistance fighters planted explosives beneath the very feet of Dominion tanks, vanishing before the smoke cleared. Wherever the aliens struck, defiance sparked. From orbit, it looked meaningless, small acts of desperation against overwhelming might. But Dravketh saw what the others refused to see. Sparks gather. Sparks spread. And when enough sparks ignite, fire follows. The Dominion had come expecting weakness. Instead, they had lit a fuse. And humanity, fragile and stubborn, was about to burn brighter than they ever imagined. The war for Earth reached its crescendo in fire. Dominion warships had burned cities across continents, leading trails of molten ruin. Skyscrapers crumbled. Highways became rivers of twisted steel. To the overseers, it was progress, a species beaten toward inevitable surrender. But in the ashes, something unanticipated stirred. Humanity was not surrendering. It was hardening. The breaking point came in the ruins of New Delhi. The Dominion targeted the city as a symbolic strike. Their orders were clear: crush the resistance, shatter human morale, erase their will to fight. Dozens of dropships descended, their armored troops sweeping block by block. Above, gunships prowled the smoke-choked sky. What the Dominion did not know was that the resistance had been preparing for weeks. Scattered cells had converged: soldiers, engineers, mechanics, even street gangs. Weapons scavenged from alien wreckage were wired into homemade launchers. Power lines were rigged into traps. Entire neighborhoods became killing grounds, every alleyway a snare. The Dominion thought they were hunting. Instead, they were walking into the jaws of a trap. The battle began at dawn. A Dominion column advanced through a marketplace, their exosuits gleaming. Loudspeakers barked commands of surrender. Then, without warning, the ground erupted, improvised mines tearing through their ranks. From rooftops, humans rained gunfire and Molotov flames. The aliens roared, returning fire with plasma bolts that turned walls to ash. But for every human that fell, two more appeared. They fought from windows, sewers, rooftops, moving like water around the invaders. At the center of the chaos, a single human soldier became legend. Sergeant Arun Patel, wounded in the opening salvo, dragged himself behind cover, bleeding heavily. Any other species would have succumbed, but not him. Propping his rifle against rubble, he continued firing, each shot precise, each breath ragged. Even when his arm went limp, he reloaded with trembling hands, teeth clenched against agony. A Dominion commander, towering in reinforced armor, advanced toward him. "Weak creature," it growled through the translator. "Why do you persist?" Arun spat blood and smiled. "Because I can." He pulled the pin on a grenade and hurled it beneath the alien's feet. The explosion lit the street in thunder, tearing the commander apart. The soldiers who witnessed it shouted with new fury. His defiance became fuel. By midday, the battle spread across the city. Humans swarmed from tunnels and shadows, striking, retreating, striking again. Improvised explosives toppled Dominion walkers. Sabotage power grids fried their shields. In the skies, hijacked drones crashed into gunships, fire blooming like flowers. For the first time, Dominion forces faltered. On the Vadralis, Commander Redhar snarled at the chaos unfolding on the holoscreen. Impossible. They should be broken. They are dying in droves, yet they advance. A scientist whispered, trembling, they fight beyond logic. Even wounded, they refuse to yield. It is as if they value endurance above survival itself. Redhar struck the scientist down with a blow, silencing him. But Overseer Dravketh spoke softly, his voice like steel beneath calm. No, Commander. They do not value endurance above survival. They understand something we do not. And what is that? Redhar hissed. Dravketh's gaze lingered on the screen, where a group of civilians shielded children while hurling rocks at armed soldiers. They endure because they refuse to abandon one another. That is their strength. By nightfall, the Dominion retreated for New Delhi's heart, leaving behind smoldering streets. They had not been defeated in numbers, their forces remained vast. But something had cracked in their certainty. The humans had stood, and in standing, had proven unbreakable. Word of the battle spread like wildfire. Across Earth, whispers became rallying cries, Delhi stands. We can fight. We can win. In the council chamber, silence hung like a blade. The overseers had no easy explanation. For the first time, they saw not fragile prey but something far more dangerous. Commander Redhar broke the silence with a growl. We will escalate. Burn them all if we must. But Dravketh only whispered to himself, almost inaudible. No fire can burn out a will such as theirs. We are not crushing them. We are forging them. The Dominion Council chamber was silent. For the first time since the fleet had descended upon Earth, there was no jeering, no confident predictions of swift victory. Instead, the overseers sat in heavy stillness, their luminous eyes fixed on the holoscreen replaying the Battle of New Delhi. The images were undeniable, humans dragging wounded comrades through fire, civilians hurling stones at armored troops, soldiers fighting long after their bodies should have failed. Dominion warriors had withdrawn not because they lacked power, but because the humans refused to break. Commander Redhar snarled, breaking the silence. His talons gouged furrows into the metal table. They are vermin. They swarm in desperation, nothing more. An inconvenience, not a threat. Dravketh turned his head slowly, the faintest edge of contempt in his voice. And yet those vermin bled your soldiers in the streets. Your troops retreated. Tell me, Commander, when have vermin ever made the hunters flee? Rethar's eyes flashed, but he did not answer. Reports poured in from across Earth. In the frozen Siberian tundra, Dominion patrols had vanished, lured into blizzards by villagers who knew every ridge and cave. In the jungles of South America, hunters picked off armored squads one by one, using traps of vine and stone. In shattered European cities, entire neighborhoods resisted occupation with improvised weapons and stolen alien rifles. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. Each defeat only seemed to breed more defiance. This is unprecedented, admitted one overseer, his voice low. Other species collapse once their cities burn. These humans, his throat quivered as he searched for words. They seemed to grow stronger in the fire. In the laboratories, scientists who had once mocked humanity now studied them with awe. Reports spoke of adrenaline surges that pushed human bodies beyond rational limits. Of brains rewiring under stress, learning faster than expected. Of cultural instincts to cooperate, even among strangers. Unity under pressure, one scientist whispered. That is their weapon. Another added, they fight not for territory, not for resources. They fight for one another. For something abstract, an idea. That is, terrifying. The overseers dismissed these voices publicly, but privately, they felt unease. On Earth, that unease had already taken form. In the ruins of Paris, a Dominion commander captured a group of civilians. One of them, a woman with dirt on her face and a child clinging to her leg, refused to kneel. "Why do you resist?" the commander demanded through his translator. "We are stronger. We are inevitable." The woman looked up, bloody but unbroken. "You don't understand," she said. "You can kill us. But you can't make us stop fighting." The alien struck her down in fury, but her words lingered. The soldiers who witnessed it carried the memory back to their ranks. On the Vadralis, Dravketh finally spoke the truth aloud. "We are not facing weakness," he said, his voice low but steady. "We are facing something new. Strength not of body, but of will. They do not measure life in years or victories, but in persistence. Where others collapse, they endure. Where others kneel, they rise again." The chamber was still. Even Redhar did not interrupt. Dravketh rose from his seat, towering over the table. His eyes gleamed with cold realization. "We thought their fragility made them easy prey. But fragility has taught them to adapt, to cling to each other, to fight with desperation that becomes determination. We sought to break them, but in doing so, we have revealed the truth." "And what truth is that?" an overseer asked, voice trembling. Dravketh's answer was heavy with finality. "That humanity is not weak. Humanity is dangerous." Outside the chamber, Earth turned silently in the void, scarred yet unbowed. Across its battered surface, lights flickered back on in ruined cities. Radios buzzed with messages of defiance. Soldiers and civilians alike prepared for the next battle, not with despair, but with fire in their hearts. The Dominion had come to conquer. Instead, they had awakened something ancient and unyielding. And as the overseers finally began to understand, they felt something their kind had not felt in centuries. Fear. The smoke of battle lingered over Earth like a second sky. Cities still burned, skies still trembled with the hum of alien engines, but something fundamental had shifted. The Dominion, for all its power, had failed to break humanity. And now both predator and prey understood what that meant. On the surface, survivors rose from rubble. In New Delhi, resistance fighters carried their wounded through streets that glowed red with fire, cheering despite their exhaustion. In Warsaw, tunnels echoed with laughter as children returned from delivering messages, alive. In the Amazon, hunters painted their faces with ash, celebrating the ambush of another Dominion patrol. Everywhere, the message spread: we can fight. We can endure. The dead were mourned, but their sacrifices became banners. Graves turned into rallying points, each one a reminder that humanity would not vanish quietly. On the Vadralis, silence choked the Dominion's War Council. The overseers stared at the holoscreens filled with reports of resistance, of human stubbornness, of failed operations. They had expected statistics of conquest, not tales of retreat. Commander Redhar pounded the table. "This cannot continue. We are the Dominion. We have crushed empires that span galaxies. And now we bleed against creatures who cannot even pierce our hulls without scrap metal." His fury rang hollow. The counselors did not jeer this time, nor echo his rage. They knew the truth, though none wanted to say it aloud. Finally, Dravketh rose. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the chamber like a blade cutting through silence. "We came to Earth expecting weakness. Instead, we found resilience. We sought to extinguish their spirit. Instead, we ignited it. Every blow we strike only makes them stronger." Redhar snarled, "You speak of them as equals." Dravketh's gaze did not waver. "No, Commander. I speak of them as something worse. They are not equals. They are survivors. And survivors are harder to kill than warriors." The chamber froze. No overseer dared to contradict him. Among the Dominion's rank and file, whispers spread. Soldiers spoke of humans who laughed as they bled, who fought with bare hands against armored beasts, who refused to kneel even when their cities burned. Some whispered that perhaps humanity was cursed, or blessed, beings of persistence rather than flesh. For the first time, the Dominion felt not superiority, but unease. On Earth, defiance solidified into unity. Leaders who once bickered over borders now shared battle plans. Engineers from rival nations built weapons together in hidden workshops. Radios carried not just news, but hope, voices of strangers reaching across continents, binding humanity into something greater than it had ever been. In a bunker beneath London, a weary general looked over the maps scattered across the table. Red markers showed cities lost. Green ones showed where resistance still burned. Slowly, steadily, the green spread. He smiled, the first true smile in weeks. "They thought we were weak," he murmured. "Let's prove them right about one thing: we don't know when to quit." The overseers held one final council before withdrawing a portion of their fleet. Officially, it was a strategic redeployment. Unofficially, it was the first sign of hesitation. Drapketh stood at the viewport, watching Earth spin below. The planet glowed with scars, but also with fire. He thought of the soldier in New Delhi who smiled through blood, of the mother who told her captor they would never stop fighting. For the first time in his long life, he felt something the Dominion had nearly forgotten: respect. And beneath that respect, a colder emotion, fear. The invasion was far from over. Battle still raged, the Dominion still held terrible power. But humanity had already won something greater than territory. They had proven to themselves, and to the galaxy, that they could not be broken. In the quiet that followed, Earth's people looked to the stars not with dread, but with fire in their eyes. They had been underestimated. They had been tested. And they had endured. Weak? Perhaps in flesh. Fragile? Undeniably. But in spirit, they were unyielding. And for the first time in the long history of the Dominion, their enemies whispered the truth. Humanity was dangerous.